quick meeting, but all the effort, and thank you guys for keeping us chugging along here. So with that, we'll start our study session and start with the request for commissioners to look at having a city commission representative on the Parks and Rec Commission. Mayor Pro Tem Hess, that was, your name's on this, but I know that the whole ad hoc had that discussion and you brought it up previously during a meeting, so why don't you go ahead and lead with that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Shamro. So at the ad hoc interview committee for the Parks and Recreation Committee, this topic came up of whether or not we would be interested in adding a commissioner, a city commissioner, as a standing representative on the Parks and Rec Commission. And that we had some very brief conversations around that at the ad hoc and wanted to bring it forward to this committee and really looking at whether or not that might offer the benefit to strengthen the connection between the advisory committee that's doing some of the planning work and advising the city commission and the elected body that's responsible for policy and the budgetary decisions. So a lot of this was in the communication that was distributed in your packet, but in terms of the scale and visibility of Parks and Rec, it represents one of the city's largest expenditures outside of police and fire. It's also one of the most visible services that residents experience day to day, and because of that scale and impact, we had a brief conversation about whether or not improved coordination between the advisory committee and the city commission would be important. And that also helps us align with some of our other city boards and commissions with similar focus. Hickory Hills Advisory Committee, the Brown Bridge Advisory Committee, the Joint Rec Authority all have city commission representation on them. So it would also, in addition to improved coordination and communication, it would create more consistent governance structure among these other committees and some improved continuity. I think it also could help with strategic alignment of the Parks and Rec new master plan as well as the city's strategic action plan. And having a commissioner at that table would help to assist with shared priorities, fewer disconnects, and a smoother implementation of some of the decisions that are coming from that group. So I emailed Lauren early on. She indicated that there were no legal barriers to this change, but we would have to have a change in ordinance. So tonight's just really about policy direction. It's not a final action. So just wanted to kind of open it up to the group and see what the opinions are.
So I wanted to also say it seemed like this had, at least initially, a lot of support to at least have the discussion. Is there anybody, let's start out, that has a strong feeling that we shouldn't do this? Because if not, then we'll proceed to the kind of questions here were, do we wait for attrition and replace a seat, or do we want to expand it out by another citizen and a city commissioner and make it a 9-person board? So we could start there. I also wanted to ask really quickly, what's the terms for Parks and Rec? Is it
the length?
3 or 4?
3-year terms.
Would we want the city commission ones to be a 3-year as well, or would we be looking at a 4-year?
I would recommend a 2-year term to track with the term of city commission.
Because we have that go different ways too, of 2 and 4, and planning gets weird too, I think. So, okay, so.
3 seats expired this September.
So
this is kind of like the optimal time if we were going to have a city commissioner on this board. I prefer to do it through attrition. I don't want to see I prefer 7 rather than 9. I'd like to see it done through attrition, and it'll just give the opportunity. It looks like those 3 appointees on that Parks and Rec right now are the junior serving. Like they have the least amount of time, so I don't know if someone might think this isn't best for me, but I think that's the opportunity that they could reapply, and if all 3 apply, then we would pick 2. But that's just kind of my thought on it.
Okay. Good, Lance, and then
how long are the meetings generally? Because I tend to agree with Ken on this. You add 9 people, that's 20 more minutes of talking, at least potentially, at least if they were at a city commission meeting. So yeah, just curious. I don't want to make these meetings too long that people don't want to be on them. If we were to go up to 9 members versus just do this through attrition and add a single commissioner.
Mitchell, you served on the Parks and Rec Commission.
It tends to be about an hour and a half or so.
Okay.
Heather, you had your hand up?
I agree. I mean, I'd rather do attrition as well. The problem is that all
Good
these
people.
seats go up in September, and I think the master plan is going to be worked on all summer, so we'll miss
Mm.
the really
Yeah.
important strategic meshing that
Window.
that should be going on. So is there a workaround here? We can have,
It was kind of interesting. We had two applicants for the position, and we just appointed them, and they were just added to it. So if we did remove someone, we would probably get rid of someone that we just appointed to it. So I wouldn't want to see
I
it,
wouldn't want to do
I wouldn't
that.
want to see it done like that, yeah.
So I think that that's something where we could get a little creative. Could we kind of pre-select the commissioner we want to know and have them audit after a fashion? Or is there room to create ex officio
Yeah, I mean, you could,
initially and then make it a permanent person?
all of the above are options really, or you could simply have a commissioner that you designate that attends the meetings and isn't, that's sort of what you're saying with ex officio really, if they weren't voting, but, there's, any of those options would work.
Well, and the difference between kind of auditing versus ex officio could be that the ex officio would actually have a right to speak during discussions, but wouldn't have a vote.
Right.
So if we could add, I'm going to have Lauren double check on that before it comes back to us. But would that be agreeable to everybody have that? And then come September, we would kind of do that shift and however that policy needs to be written. Or is that the will of everyone? I think it would be important to have somebody vote, but if you guys think that just having an ex officio on it would help, but then you wouldn't have a vote, so.
I think the ex officio would work over the summer months.
Short
I think it's versus just having someone just audit the meetings, because then you're sitting and you're making public comment at the end of discussion, which isn't that helpful. So I think having an ex officio member that's actually participating with the group and in the discussion and in the deliberation would be helpful. And then moving for that September date to actually add the commissioner, city commissioner, as a standing member of the group.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Also, for sake of continuity, we have recently appointed somebody, but we do have 3 seats that will come terms due, and if those 3 people decide that they don't want to apply, which I think is unlikely, we could have very significant turnover, so having a few seats that have been there through the process
Yeah.
can really help.
get some sea legs there. Okay, so what I'm hearing from everybody is we want ex officio, policy would bring us forward and allow us to have ex officio added as soon as would be allowable by process to tide us over till September, at which point we would make one of those open seats a city commission designated and keep 2 public seats on that, and we'll have that brought back to us. Was there anything else that people wanted to add or any gaps we see in what we've discussed? Great. Well, thank you to that whole ad hoc for bringing this idea back to us, and I think that this will be a good, positive movement for us. So we'll look forward to that coming to us in the next couple of weeks. With that, we will then move on to the fiscal year comprehensive audit. Heidi.
Yes, so we have Doug Bredeveld with our auditors, Bredeveld Hefner here, and he's here to present our June 30th, 2025 audit results.
And to very briefly do so. Thank you very much.
He's usually pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm good at brief. I can do that. Thank you very much. Glad to be here tonight and just go over it. It is June 30, 25 year end. The audit this year for 25 went much better than the 24 audit. It was not only was it Heidi's first full year, but we didn't have that data breach thing to deal with for 25. Sorry to bring up bad memories. But staff in 24 basically had to redo a lot of different schedules and balancing reports. So it went much smoother this year from both, I hope, their standpoint and ours. So appreciate everybody's work and helping us gather up all the information for the audit. So this year we did a financial statement audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as generally accepted government auditing standards, and also completed a single audit of the federal expenditures, the expenditures of federal awards. So we had no findings. I don't know if you have the statement in front of you. If you do, I'll throw out a few page numbers, but basically on page 1 is the opinion on the financial statement. There's not a slide for this, but the opinion was a good unmodified opinion. It says in our opinion, the statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city. So that's a good, clean audit report and certainly what you hope for. And then also in connection with the single audit, There was 1.4 million roughly in federal grants that we have to look at and determine which ones we have to drill down into to do a full audit. But there were no significant deficiencies, material weaknesses, or findings reported. Those reports are back on page 133 and 135 of the report. So all in all, a good, clean audit, and everything went very well. And then I have just a few slides put together with a few highlights. I do want to emphasize, I want to make sure I address what you want to know about. So if there's other questions, I'm certainly happy to take those. But the first few slides here are the overall governmental activities, which are all of the activities of the city other than water and sewer, all boiled down into a full accrual basis. So you can see here the expenses by function and the functions of general government, public safety, and so forth compared to the direct or program revenues. And what this slide really emphasizes is where do the non-program revenues go? And they are used to make up that difference between the expenses and the program or direct revenues. So you can see general government uses some of the property tax, public safety uses that. Public Works is a little bit odd because the program revenues include your Act 51 street revenue, for example, and that money is actually capitalized at this level, not expensed. So the expenses are lower, but the revenue stays there. And then the same with culture and recreation. There was some capital grants that were received, so they're not expensed, but the revenue is there. So, and then this is a pie chart on that same basis of where the revenue is all coming from. And you can see the bigger piece there, the 44%. I don't know how we ended up with two of the same colors here, but, but the 44% is your property taxes. So and that's, the next slide I'll show you the consistency from year to year. And 28% this year in capital grants, and that's a bit higher the last couple of years than what it has been. And here you can see, this is a comparison of what that pie chart information has, but a comparison for the last 5 years. You can see property taxes, the bigger number way on the right there, consistently has increased over the years. Capital grants the last couple of years has been much higher. So you've been going after and getting some grants. And even though the bars are very small, but the interest and other bars there, you can see the last 2 years, the interest income has jumped pretty significantly. On this, $20 million chart, it doesn't look like much, but that's up a lot for the last couple of years, which is very good. And that's just interest rates plus the type of investments that the money is in. So. And then just to cover a couple things on the general fund, page 106 is probably the best place to see where this information is coming from. This is just strictly your general fund now, expenditures by function. And you can see over the last several years, things are pretty consistent among all the different, they steadily increase. Nothing unusual that I wanted to point out on this slide. Now, your general fund, as reported in the financial statements, is a little bit different than the general fund that you use for budgeting. In the financial statement, we're required by GASB 54 to combine several of your other smaller funds into the general fund. So this chart shows you the general fund balance, both on the internal basis, which is the lighter blue line, and then on the GASB 54 basis. And you can see that they're pretty consistent in both ways. For the year ended, the budgeted loss on the overall GASB 54 basis was 4.1 million, and the actual loss was just under 600,000. So you finished well ahead of budget. And on the internal general fund, it was a budgeted loss of 3.5 million, and your actual loss of 300,000. So you finished ahead of your budget on both bases, or both the budget basis, I guess we'll call it, and the GASB 54 reporting basis. Boy, is it through all those notes really quick. Okay, then just the wastewater fund, the sewer fund. We just look at here the revenues and expenses compared to different years and make sure that there's a positive net change in position here, and there has been for the last 5 years in both the wastewater and in the water fund, which is the next slide. So we just try to monitor that to make sure that if there is negatives, we want to point that out to you for rate setting purposes, but it looks like things here are going relatively smoothly.
And I just want to point out that, as I think is widely known, and we're going to talk about fund balance for general fund in the next agenda item, but here for wastewater and water, there has been a period of time where revenues are exceeding expenses, and that's strategic because we have a lot of very high dollar capital needs that are required to maintain that critical infrastructure. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yes, it is okay to have a positive bottom line, especially in these two funds.
Benjamin, is it safe to say that those excesses in those funds are going to go towards the membrane train replacements that we didn't talk about last meeting?
Yes, yeah, for wastewater, yes.
And other,
Yep. And then wastewater also has some other very significant capital needs as well as the water infrastructure too.
Yeah,
Tens
and-
of millions of dollars.
Yeah, and one other thing to point out, there's nothing on the slide, but on page 25 is your cash flow statement for the enterprise funds. And the cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year for the wastewater fund is 5.8 million. In the water fund, it's $5,000. So there's not a lot of cash there. There might be some tied up in investments. Yeah, there's 2.8 million tied up in investments in that water fund. So, but all in all, the cash balances are not outrageous by any means with some of the capital that has to be taken care of. So that was all I had to present. That's the end of the slides. Is there any other areas of concern that I can address or things you might have noticed that raised questions?
I guess maybe one question. It was, so when we're looking at this one, do you have the rest of the slides from the packet? Who's the scroll master of the?
I got
He's
them.
the scroll master.
He does
Scrolling, yep.
It was page 34 of the 161-page packet.
Oh, that
Oh,
might, that's not gonna
that
be up
page,
there.
okay.
That's not up there? Well, there was an
That's
$8 gain on the sale of a capital asset. And it was, it had its own line, and it perplexed me.
Well,
fair.
It was.
that's in governmental activities,
Yeah,
on change of net position.
It was, of the 161-page packet, it was on page 34.
Yep.
And then when you went into the audit, it was actually page 16.
Yeah. Here you
If
go,
anybody
Heidi.
wanted to look at it and see it, but
That's in governmental activities. I couldn't tell you what number or what that relates to. For $8, I likely did not look at it.
box of crayons, I just,
Well, the printer turned out to be more valuable.
it was about the only single-digit
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
amount
sure.
on the entire packet, so.
Well, it looks like it's the net of gain and losses. So we
Oh.
sold some things and then we gained, so
Oh,
that's
okay,
just the
okay,
net.
it wasn't just one
It wasn't
single
just one thing
okay.
where we made $8.
Then I'm-
Great question.
Fascinating.
Other questions? Go
I
ahead,
have
Heidi.
just a little one. Would the Brown Bridge Trust disbursement be why capital, the capital grants are up this year a little bit?
That didn't get voted on until the fall, right? And this was through the end of July, of June.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that wouldn't have been recorded before June 30th.
we've been just very fortunate, sounds like, getting a lot of good grants. Yeah.
I mean, I guess we're going to talk about the unassigned general fund balance a little bit later. And there's the 11.42, and then they also talk about 8.79 million. One's 42%, and one's 34%. And we try and target a 15 to 20. Is that our policy?
That's the city
or is-
commission policy.
That's our
yes.
policy. that
And
we
we're
want.
required to maintain no less than 15% by GASB, is that correct?
No,
Oh.
GASB has a rule of thumb, so to speak, but there is not a requirement.
Okay. What's
Okay.
the rule of thumb?
For a city this size, 10 to 15%.
Okay.
For a lot of smaller cities, I usually tell them 25%, because 25% is a 3-month operating slush fund, if you will. In case something happens, they can keep going for 3 whole months. But Traverse City has a lot more going on, or bigger cities in general.
So I don't want to jump to anything, but we're going to talk later about possibly waiving the policy of maintaining the 15 to 20%, correct?
Yes, yep.
As an increase or underneath? Or
We're over.
we're going to go over?
Yeah, yeah, and we'll talk about
We
that
are over, and-
extensively in
And
the
we
next
want to
agenda
continue
item.
to go over for the
Yeah.
capital stuff that we're going to talk about, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I was just kind of like setting a thought in
Yeah.
my mind, okay.
Exciting stuff, stay tuned.
Not really, just questions.
Other questions right now about the audit? All right, I think that was great. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, looks like I got my cursor back here. Okay, so with that, we will now move on to the general operating fund balance, and I'll have you kick that off, Ben.
Yes, thank you. My document is loading here, but I just want to go through a few points, then I'll turn it over to the city treasurer and finance director, Heidi Sheppy. But as was just mentioned, the city commission has a general fund balance policy that says that you shall have no less than 15% or no more than 20% of your general fund operating expenses. And I'm coming to you now because we're in the thick of preparing the city manager's proposed budget that will be presented to the city commission in May. And before we get too far into that, I wanted to get some direction from the commission on adherence to this fund balance policy, and that policy is completely at the city commission's discretion. And so you have a memo in the packet from Ms. Sheppy that indicates that in order to align with the city commission's maximum fund balance, there would be approximately 3.54 million above the unassigned fund balance that would then be available for redirection, if you will, by the city commission. So 3.54 million. And I want to highlight a few items. As is widely known, we are for the first time building a multi-year budget projections to provide elevated context and strategic intentionality in developing the budget that will reveal certain trends that won't be more fully into view until September of this year, when Treasury accounting cycles are much more complete. We have a variety of near-term financial pressures, including over the last few years, as is the case with multiple employee markets, we've had to significantly increase wages in order to attract and retain employees in an increasingly competitive job market. We have less and less applicants for positions, and we're continuing to evaluate our wages because we have critical services that have to be provided by those employees. And also, that, of course, means there's a an increase in pension contribution as a result of those increased wages. And we have budgeted for this coming fiscal year 1.1 million in fund balance toward our underfunded pension liability. Also related to pension, our plan is presently funded at 55.2%. We'll be required by the state soon to increase those minimum contributions. We also have some capital and infrastructure and revenue uncertainty. We just had over $7 million in anticipated general fund appropriation for this coming fiscal year to fund critical capital improvement needs. We're also taking, for the first time really, a strategic view, a holistic view of our facilities assets. For years, the city has had facilities that have not been budgeted to be maintained like they should be, and we're doing that now. As you know, we have a facilities manager on board as well. That's going to require a tremendous investment that we haven't had before. There's also the governmental center building, as well as the law enforcement center building. The future of them, which is unknown, but this building is having more and more issues, as we also have some issues at the law enforcement center, and those are going to be very big ticket items. I also want to share that when the voters approved in 2023 the millage to fund primary transport services to be provided by our fire department, it aims to cover the cost of personnel and the acquisition of ambulances, but did not account for the building of the new facility that will be necessary. That is a very important item, and I anticipate we will likely need to go back to the voters for a millage for that important need to provide the service that the voters approve. Also, which we'll talk about in the next agenda item, there's the big looming question about the future of TIF 97. And we don't know what that looks like in terms of whether it'll just simply expire, if it'll be reset, renewed, or something in between. We also have a lot of policy initiatives and strategic planning initiatives. So we have core services we provide, and we're now looking at strategic investments. And so I'm coming to you with the recommendation that you allow us to build this coming year's budget, not basically suspending that fund balance policy, so that in September, we would ask the City Commission to establish an ad hoc committee consisting of 3 commissioners, and it would also include the city treasurer and myself to develop a plan for how to allocate that outstanding fund balance. And I think that that is, in my view, the most prudent thing to do, but I didn't want to make that assumption and come to you with a budget in May that didn't take into account this fund balance policy. We have the time now to pivot, if that's what the City Commission wants. And I know I've said a little bit more than maybe I intended, but Ms. Sheppy, please add anything that you think needs to be highlighted too. And I know you've got your presentation as well.
Yeah, I can just start the presentation if that's. So the fund balance policy, as Ben said, we're trying to determine when creating the budget where we want to go. This presentation is just a snapshot of the general fund as reported by our auditors as of June 30th. And so just for the new commissioners, just to kind of review what is fund balance. So fund balance represents the city's financial reserves, kind of essentially our savings account. So that's very helpful when dealing with cash flow. When we start the fiscal year in July, we want to make sure we have enough to cover all of our expenditures as the taxable revenue comes in. The reserves exist not only to protect the city during emergencies and unexpected events, but it also helps manage the economic uncertainty and the revenue volatility. As the auditor said, interest has been really good the last couple of years, but it's totally relying on the economics and the market and those kind of things. So we don't like to take anything for granted and want to plan accordingly. Fund balance policy, as Ben has stated, I'll try not to repeat some of the stuff, but as shown in the slide by the auditors, we have the general operating fund, and then we also have the GASB 54 general fund totals. The policy adheres solely to the general fund. So on the slide that the auditors had, it was the lower of the two bars that we're referring to. And the policy, it's a good policy, and it does is in line with GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Boards, in terms of the recommendation of 15 to 20%. Overall, in the packet we had like the calculations, but I'll just kind of go through. The GASB 54, as shown in the auditor's report, was $14.4 million. That includes the general operating fund and the GASB 54. Of that, the unassigned portion is $11.42 million, and that gets us to 41.9. 41.9 obviously is significantly higher than the 20% goal, but that reflects a strong overall financial capacity of the city as a whole. But this also is all of the funds, not just the general fund, which the policy we have to adhere to. So the general fund, as a snapshot, the total fund balance is 10.27. With that, we have to back out the non-spendable items, inventory, prepaid expenses, already assigned fund balances from the 25-26 budget. And then, so after that, we have planned set-asides. Then it gets us down to the $8.79 million. This is the figure that we use to determine compliance with the fund balance policy. So there's a lot of numbers and a lot of compile, but 8.79 is kind of where we're landing in terms of the general fund operating. Is that wrong?
Point this way.
There we go. Okay, so policy comparison. So fiscal year, the general operating fund budget was $26.28 million. Of that, the unassigned 80.79 equals roughly 33% of the total expenditures. So 33.5 expenditures places us above, but I just wanted to call out in comparison. So in the audit, we had a fund balance of $8,793,000, which is the 33.57. Last year, we had a fund balance of $8,893,000. So realistically, our fund balance only went down $100,000, but we went from 40% down to 33 because our expenditures jumped. So it's really not a matter of what we have. If the expenditures are going to pace higher than that reduction, that percentage is very volatile and can go pretty slow, pretty quick, or pretty low, pretty quickly. So just wanted to put that out there. So what this means is, obviously, we are compliant. We are in compliant with our policy because we are above what our goal is. But we want to, one of the things we want to request is to suspend the policy. So the current unassigned fund balance exceeds the 3.5, but we want to consider future priorities, as Ben said, that are, this excess reflects uncertainty, and we've been planning for future obligations. So it was intentional to grow the fund balance for these plans in the future. Certain things that we have, near-term financial pressures, as Ben said, the recent wage increases, they have higher fixed costs, and those fixed costs are going to carry forward permanently and in perpetuity, and they're going to increase by COLAs every year. So all of that we want to consider when making this decision. Pension contributions also follow along with the wages. Health insurance costs, HR has brought in some numbers. Those are increasing as well. The fiscal budget this year, we budgeted $1.1 million, and to budget the balance. So to balance the budget. So when we created the 25-26 budget, we didn't have enough revenues to cover, so we had to intentionally budget 1.1. Now, whether we'll actually use that, department heads do a really good job of staying within their budget and being reasonable. But realistically, looking at the preliminary numbers, we're probably going to need to budget fund balance again this year to balance the budget. So even though we have that 3.5 million, if we use a portion of it to balance the budget for the 26-27 budget, it's really not that full amount. So pension funding status, that's another thing you'll be seeing from me. When I first started, the state came to us and basically said we are underfunded and have put us on a corrective action plan. We have been intentionally increasing our ARC payment, annual required contribution to MERS, and that has helped, but, and again, our pension liability is based on our wages. So the 55.2% is based on the June 30th, 2025, but it's the actually June 30th, 2024 actuarials. So we're always a year behind in calculating that, which doesn't take into effect some of the significant negotiated increases that we've had with personnel. So most likely you'll be seeing that corrective action plan coming to you in the next month or so from the state, and I'll be asking for an additional contribution to go into that to comply with the state's requirement. Capital and facility needs, as Ben had stated, capital improvement plan was just given to the Planning Commission, but you'll see there's over $7 million in general fund requests from the CIP alone just for general fund contributions. That doesn't include the $1 million that we have dedicated to street funding. We do know this building and the law enforcement center are something we want to start planning and saving for. Most likely if we had a big expense like that, bonding is where we're going to go. But the cost of interest on those kind of things, anything we can have as a down payment, as you know, with a down payment on your home, you're going to save yourself in the long run. So if we did have any extra in the fund balance, that could be somewhere we can direct it as well. And also, You guys just voted Plant Moran, Real Point was engaged for facilities analysis, and so we'll be getting that report in 8 to 12 months. And I think what we're going to see is there's going to need some contributions for some of our current buildings that we have. So those are the kind of things that the fund balance is not meant to be for ongoing expenditures. It's for one-time things like these kind of things. And when you draw it on the fund balance, you don't want to use it for wages or anything that's going to be going forward in perpetuity. It would be with these one-time expenditures. Right. So facility assessment estimates. Tower Pinkster had done an assessment January 30th, 2024. They had identified $11.16 million in facility upgrades needed. That's just for city facilities. Governmental center alone is $8.81 million. DPS building 1.6, and then MS4, the CIP has an additional $750,000 for brine management. So those are just a few things on the horizon, things we're looking to plan for, and fund balance is kind of what you want to keep an eye out. Or the intentional use of fund balance is our goal here. As stated, revenue risk. The CIP, we have $26 million in DDA TIF 97 revenue budgeted in the CIP over the next 6 years. Now, that is totally dependent on whether the TIF 97 is renewed. Now, that doesn't mean that this general fund will have to cover that full 26 million, but that means the hard decisions are going to need to be made whether those projects are going to be done or not. So if TIF 97 does not renew, then it'll be up to this commission to decide of those projects what you want to use general fund money for, and then if you're using general money fund for that, then what don't you want to do that's also on our plan. So those are just things we want to always plan for, think about, and make sure it's a conscious decision when we make this going forward. Policy and community priorities. So you guys have just the objectives and key results, which I thank you because it'll help with my submission for the budget. We're hopefully going for a budget award for GFOA this year.
Fingers crossed.
And this is what we needed. Also, affordable housing focus, increased pilots. And we all know that housing is an issue in the city, but every pilot that we approve has an effect on the revenue and the bottom line in terms of that taxable revenue. When Doug was here, he showed taxable revenue as our significant revenue source. So as we approve these pilots, the pool of revenue does go down. Current pilot impact is roughly $600,000 annually. Historically, roughly $6 million. This is, we don't have the records going back, so kind of what I did is I took this year's taxable revenue concession and times it by the number of years that the pilot has been in effect. So this is, take it with a grain of salt, just a rough number there, that $6 million cumulative. Yeah.
And that doesn't account for the increase in property value that is caused by some of these developments over the vacant land that existed beforehand, right?
Correct. This is just the current taxable value compared to the pilot rents and the difference between the two, and then times the number of years. Just back in the math, just to give you a rough estimate.
Essentially money we would have had
If the
there
pilot
a
wasn't,
pilot.
yeah.
And the property was still in existence as it currently is.
Correct. So planning for the future, as you've heard, this year is going to be a multi-year budget forecasting. So we're going to have the fiscal year 26-27 that you'll be voting and approving on, but then it'll also be 27-28 and 28-29 estimates. So you'll we'll be able to gauge how that fund balance is going to draw down or what's going to happen with those personnel numbers. So our goal is to improve our long-term planning, anticipate these financial risks early so we can get ahead of them, and just make informed decisions. So based on everything that both Ben and I have said, our recommendation, due to the near-term operating pressures, long-term pension obligations, we recommend that we suspend the fund balance policy just for the fiscal 26-27 budget year to allow time for comprehensive planning and evaluation of all of the information going forward.
So really quick question about that. You've said that you want to have the ad hoc formed in September when we have a clearer vision. Is this something that the suspension of the policy, though, would that be brought to us like in the next business meeting or two?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify the timeline on that.
And then based on the work of that ad hoc committee, you could do mid-year budget amendments, right? The city commission always has that flexibility, so it's not like you're not able to really, as a budgetary standpoint, consider a change until June or July of next year. You could do a mid-year budget amendment, so I just wanted to make that clear, too.
So I believe this is the final slide, just the kind of key takeaways. Our fund balance, I mean, it's significantly above our policy. It's strong, but it is under pressure. And it's a little misleading in terms of excess capacity. We have significant risks ahead, pensions, facilities, capital fundings, and so we want to make sure we preserve that flexibility for going forward in budgeting. And that's all I got.
So I just wanted to say that I'm really appreciative of this, as gone through many budget cycles now, went through a real tightening of the belt at TCLP to get our pension liability down, and some of the other things that we've looked at and we hear, and it's gone, the fund balance has gone a couple ways where it's been, we've got all this money sitting here, can't we do this project for $600,000, or can't we add this for, $500,000 here? And then it's also been, but we know we have these huge expenses coming up, this building is falling apart, we've all talked about that for years. And so it's been this kind of holding both thoughts at once without actually having seen it laid out. So I really wanted to say, having gone through this several times, how much I appreciate this presentation.
And just one thing I've been trying to encouraging the department heads, when they come to you with a project that's not in the budget, in the motion, you'll see intentional use of fund balance. That's drawing down this fund balance, so.
And that's a good point, that it has come to us from staff before, but sometimes it's us ourselves too up here as the body deciding to spend money on things that we decide need to be spent on at that moment for better or worse, but we don't have this whole picture. So I'll open up for anybody's questions or comments. Go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, do we have an estimated time in number of years where we will be spending this back down to below the 20%? I actually think the 20% is a low number. Most of the boards that I sit on, it's sort of 30 to 35%. So I'm surprised that it's so low at 20. I do support uncapping this, or at least changing that number in the future.
I'm sorry.
Kind of two questions.
Yeah, so to answer your question about sort of the pace at which maybe that would be spent down, I think that's really that would be the work of the ad hoc committee if you agree to this approach, and that would be outlined within that.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Heather.
First of all, I want to say it's really nice to see all those murals and other art commission projects decorating.
Very nice.
Colleen did a great
your
job.
presentation. So I think it's prudent to follow your lead here and wait, except I'm really concerned about the striping. It's a public safety hazard. We've got a lot of people coming to town. We didn't have any crosswalks. We didn't have any bike lanes all summer long. What is the plan? Do we have stripers coming in the spring? Can we put this off? I know that it's maybe a $300,000, $500,000 investment along with the two staff people that could also work on snow. I just want to keep that up at the front and make sure that we're prepared for this summer and we don't have one like last year.
Thank you for raising that issue. We'll be coming to you here relatively soon with something on that, and we'll take the direction from the commission at that time.
And so I had a question too, and I know this will somewhat be the work of the ad hoc, but I'm curious, again, this is our first time approaching kind of this holistic view as well as a multi-year budget coming up, is in the future, as we get kind of our arms around this better and create a new, how we want to reallocate, is this something that normally cities would say, okay, instead of saying, hey, look, we've got this pile of money, it would be, we're going to try and kind of like what we do with the water fund. Are we going to try and budget in some of these areas in the future and know that there's large expenditures coming behind some of these? Some of them are just to have a safe cushion, because we have so many different funds that that aren't just enterprise funds. And so are we going to start looking, is that potentially something we'd start looking at? Is that kind of a basic rule that we haven't always been doing, or is that something that'll come out of the ad hoc recommendations?
I think it'll come out of the ad hoc recommendations, and to answer your question directly, cities handle these types of budgetary situations differently from city to city. Some cities are very conservative with their budgeting, others are very aggressive. You can kind of characterize it in different ways. Traverse City has historically been very prudent and I'd say conservative to make sure that we aren't caught in a situation that's scary. And that's really in that same spirit that we're making this recommendation, is to not have to come to you in the next couple of years with some very difficult decisions to make.
Great. Other questions? Go ahead, Laura, and then Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Heidi, thank you. I appreciate the time that staff took to approach not just these different scenarios, but also the multi-year forecasting and budgeting. I think that's going to be really helpful to this body to help inform our conversations moving forward with how we approach the fund balance. I agree with this recommendation. I think it's solid, it's responsible. It will give us the time to be more thoughtful and more proactive and less reactive in our approach to the fund balance. So I agree with it. I'm particularly sensitive to the discussion around the pension and the underfunding of the pension, and I would hope that that can be something that the ad hoc in September can dive more deeply into, because that to me seems like a big risk for the city. And I'm not sure, as a new commissioner up here, has that been a policy of the city to just meet the minimum requirements? And is that something that should be revisited? Because right now, when we look at the investments and the performance of our investments, things are good, but the headwinds could change. And that would represent a significant risk to the city. So I think as we look at this fund balance and the facility needs, the capital needs, the uncertainty of the TIF and the ambulance services, this just makes good, solid sense for the city commission to waive this policy for this year. So thank you.
Yes, I'm curious. We can do as best as we can to plan within our walls and within our city limits, but how proactively are you looking at the landscape beyond that? Because last year we did have a federal shutdown. We have had this year a partial federal shutdown, and there could be a looming one. But on a bigger scale, the governor announced on the state level, which we do get much more money, in her Saving Michiganders Money Plan, and $90 million in property tax breaks to seniors, which we have more seniors than other parts of the state. So how well have we been looking at potential changes like that and their impacts?
So revenue projections is one of the big things that we're starting to look at. And just to be honest, the current year's upcoming budget, we can get pretty close. We know, but when you're out 2 to 3 years, I don't want to say best guess, but it's not going to be 100% accurate, because one change in Lansing can change. As we know, the gas tax is no longer, so all of that, it's just everything. We get a percentage of the sales tax. Now we don't get the sales tax because it's a gas tax, but now we get the money for the roads. I mean, they do their shell games, and we just try and follow. So revenue, general fund revenue is something that we're trying to have a way to project in reality, but we do know it's not going to be 100%, but we will do our best.
And I will say, go ahead. Please go ahead.
You can go ahead.
No. Mine's just an off comment on it, so you have a question. Go ahead.
If you were carrying on that note, I wanted you to keep going with.
No, go ahead. It was off topic.
I wanted to ask about the MERS pension. It sounds like with the increase in employees over the last couple of years, just because of the demand and then the requirements of increased wages to get them in the door, that MERS pension slipped underneath the 60%, and that's something that we like to maintain is that 60%, right?
That is the state required.
That's required by the state.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
How-
we were put on a corrective action plan because we are under the 60%, and we will remain on that action plan until we are back up to 60%. We did reach out to the actuary, to MERS. Roughly 1.2 million is what it would take to get us to 60% estimatedly.
And just to clarify, just to make
get us
it,
to 60%.
just want to be perfectly clear that when we're talking about the pension status, we're not talking about police and fire pension, which is better funded by quite a bit. We're talking about all the other employees of the city.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm just wondering, because I understand how that Act 345 pension works a little bit more. It's a snapshot of the amount of employees you have over a period of time and what their benefit what that consists of. But it's a period of time, and when you re-amortize it, it's a new picture. And that's what I wonder is how often is this MERS pension re-amortized so that you can, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong,
Amortize.
Thank you. How often is that done to like look at the number of employees you have, the projected retirement dates, so that you can like figure out, because your pension funds are never 100% funded. They shouldn't be.
Right.
But you should know how many people are in your pool and when you expect them to retire and what their benefit should be.
We have an actuarial report done every June 30th. So
Okay, the MERS is every year.
December. Yeah, oh, yeah, we get it by June, but it's effective December 31st.
So this,
Okay.
this 1.2 million is very much more real time.
We reached out when making this presentation. I just wanted to know what that was, what we would need just to get to the 60%. And that is based on the last year's actuarial. So it could potentially be more, but at minimum 1.2 million would get us to the 60%.
Okay. That was, I had a big question. I didn't want to interrupt you
Yeah.
earlier, and then we kind of started like throwing questions in, but that was my biggest question on that MERS pension is when was it amortized? I can't say it.
I
sorry.
appreciate,
But when-
I commend you for trying so many times, because I avoid it.
I'm not a quitter. But thank you for that. I was curious.
And Brian Postma is here. He's very, very imperative to the office, and my Chief Deputy John. I just want to give them thanks for everything they've done to help with this as well.
Yeah. Laura, you had your hand up?
Yeah, quick question. So with the ad hoc committee that would be formed in September, would one of the goals of that ad hoc committee be to relook at this policy and the range of the recommendation, the 15 to 20%, and bring forward the new, stick within that range, or are
Yes.
there other options?
It certainly would, yes. And I also, I didn't comment specifically, but I appreciate your suggestion about it also looking at the pension
Yeah.
situation. I think that that's important, and I fully support that. And we plan to make that part of the scope of the committee. That'll be articulated when the committee is formed, so it's
Okay.
clear
That
as
makes
to its
sense.
scope.
Because, I mean, clearly with, different than Atlanta's reference to a 30 to 35%, we're sitting on taxpayer dollars. And we have an obligation to be really careful with that public money. I mean, to be good stewards of those tax dollars. And so I think looking at that range and what the various recommendations are and best practices is really important.
And I agree. And the one thing I was going to say really quickly, kind of on that note, and a couple of people who contributed to the policy at the time and had very different thoughts had a lot of range of where we ended up, are here tonight. But one of the things that was brought up when we had this policy discussion years ago, and I remember, was one of the people who was on the commission at the time was arguing, well, what if we get floods or something like that, and we need to have this money until there can be we get made whole again somehow or another through insurance or something. And that was an argument for a much larger balance at the time. And at the time, several of us, myself included, said, well, there's FEMA, there's all of this other stuff. And historically, that has been the case. Now, what we've seen in our own state in the last year or two is that's not always guaranteed the way it used to be. And so while we're having these conversations about these very important local things, I think as we are re-exploring it and being conscious of the fund balance, there is the responsibility we have to the taxpayers, absolutely, but that kind of security that we used to have there for some of these larger kind of force majeures or act of God that we used to kind of have some more reliance on our partner in governmental organizations might not be as strong as it used to be too. So I think that's something for us to keep in mind, because it's a very different mindset, I think, now from where we were 7 or 8 years ago when we had this conversation.
It's a balance, and I think it's
Oh,
important.
well, yeah, I'm
for
not
the-
saying over
yeah.
one over the other, but just bearing that in mind that
Yeah.
that was part of the conversation
Right.
at the time.
And I think it's important that every few years, this body has an opportunity to revisit those issues and keep in mind of that balance and how we approach it as elected officials.
Well, and I appreciate Benjamin bringing it up. Ken, you had your hand up?
Well, I guess it kind of goes back to what Lance said. I like that we keep that 15 to 20% policy for the unfunded, or the unassigned general fund, that fund balance. We keep that low because those are tax dollars, that's somebody's tax dollars that we took that we didn't spend. And if we are going to override this policy, which I do think is a good idea, we need to be mindful of how we're spending other monies, and we have to take into consideration, we're going to get other asks along the way. People are going to be asking for pilots. The Homelessness Task Force has, if you've talked to them, if you've seen any of their presentations, they're going to need financial contributions from the city. One of the things that I saw in that audit was $711,000 of marijuana tax money that just goes into the general fund. I don't know if we have ever decided if we would earmark it for things.
It's,
It does.
there has been allocation specifically for things like, not like, things such as police services. For instance, we have social workers that are embedded within our police department now to help really address some of the more complicated issues associated with homelessness, for instance. And so beyond that, overall, and correct me if I'm wrong, Heidi, the rest has really gone into the general fund. If the city commission ever wanted to have a more specific discussion on where those funds go, certainly. We have tried overall, and this is to the point that Heidi made earlier, that when you don't know for sure what your revenue is going to be, that cannabis revenue is not guaranteed. And so we try to not fund things that are ongoing. I know I just mentioned social worker, but they are also partially covered by grant revenues too, and that's something that the folks in those positions are aware of.
Just to call out too, we also knew this year, and you'll see it in the budget documents, we created a new department, substance response. So the COSAP grant, the opioid, and the marijuana revenue, we're trying to not tie it out one-to-one, but so for easier tracking for anything that the police department does, anything that has related to those topics, we've created a separate department for tracking. So hopefully we can get a better idea on those expenditures.
I mean, that's, in my mind, that's been money well spent. They're doing such a good job. They're presenting at conferences around the country with the work that they're doing here in Traverse City. So I'm completely pleased with their performance in that, but I think about that money because there's going to be an ask, we know it's coming, related to homelessness services. So, and I think about that marijuana tax money as an opportunity for that. I don't know if it's something for another discussion for another day, but.
It probably would be. I would say that and I don't think this was an official, maybe it was, an official policy passed by the city commission, but as the one who spent 5.5 years on the cannabis ad hocs, I can tell you that when it came to the commission, it was recommended that it come specific, and we were actually, the money and the conversations were happening at the same time. We were finding out about the opioid settlements that we are a part of still. And all, that one came with strings attached to it, the opioid settlements did, but the conversations we had about the cannabis was, how are we going to use these in kind of community enrichment? If it's kind of another vice tax, if you will, that we're going to be taking in, how do we use this to improve the health and wellness of the community? That's where the conversations came about of having, that's when we got our first social worker and things like that. And so that was able to help us have this true community policing and focus on the issue through those fundings. If, as we go to our strategic plan, and we've all talked about, and I had the opportunity to spend a few years during the policy conference, we get some kind of tourist tax, for example, that does end up bringing money into our city, that would be another opportunity for us to look at a new income revenue stream, in addition to everything else that Benjamin's talking about and all of these other conversations we'll have, of this is a new revenue stream coming in, and how does that play in this bigger picture as well, and where all of our obligations and desires kind of land. So I mentioned that again in case anybody runs into any of our state reps or feels inspired to send an email about any of that. That would be a helpful thing for our regional city like ourselves. So
I'm meeting with our U.S. senators next month, and we're going to highlight some of those needs
fantastic.
in D.C.
And just working on the marijuana, the revenue projections, it's based on the number of facilities within the city, and that number is going down. So
It's the city and the state. Like the pot we get depends on how many
we
on
get
the state
depends on how many
total.
within the
Right.
city and comparative.
Did you
Yeah.
say pot on purpose?
No, I didn't, but thank you for that. You're giving my slightly COVID rattled brain a little more credit than it deserves this evening. No, and I point that out because if there's more cities that opt in, that pool becomes diluted again. If we lose shops, the pool changes as well. So to the point that was made and to your question, Ken, like that makes it revenue we know we have coming in, what it looks like, and the huge pile of money at the end of the rainbow that we were promised is there's money there, but what it looks like and what it's going to look like long term is up to a lot of variables.
I just think that if we're gonna go over this 20% and we're gonna start sitting on people's tax dollars, because we're gonna put them to good things, we should really have tough conversations about wants and needs. Like, is this something that we have to have, or is this something that we think would be fun to have? So
It's almost a perfect segue into the next
Yeah, it's
agenda
coming
item.
But it's a real conversation, and we're having it here tonight, so.
Yeah, very good point, Lance. Or, sorry, Lance and Ken. Anything else on this before we move on? All right, great start to the conversation, I think. Thank you for that, Benjamin.
Thank you.
And with that, we will now move into the tax increment financing impact and outcomes, and I'll give that to you, Ben, and then I will go ahead and give it to Heidi. We only have one public comment on the end of the study session since this is all budget conversation tonight.
All right, so you have in the packet a presentation that has been updated a bit, and I'll reference how it's been updated throughout my comments. We, of course, from an administrative and financial standpoint, we just got done with budget-related discussions. I need to have direction from the commission as we look ahead to forecasted budgeting, fund balance strategy, long-term planning. Of course, that includes how we fund core services as well as strategic investments. And these decisions, the decisions made around TIF 97 will affect how we plan for those items. And so tonight's presentation focuses on the impacts and outcomes related to TIF 97 as the plan approaches its scheduled expiration at the end of 2027. My goal this evening isn't to advocate for a specific outcome, but to provide clear, factual information about what TIF 97 currently supports, what changes if it expires, and what options exist moving forward so we can receive direction from the commission. So we'll move on to the next slide and talk about why we're here. As you're aware, and I just mentioned, TIF 97 is set to expire in 2027. And from an administrative and financial standpoint, direction from the commission is needed as we look ahead to, as I had just said, forecasted budgeting and so forth. This includes how we fund core services, as well as strategic investments tied to the City Commission's OKRs and the Strategic Action Plan. And the decisions made or not made around TIF 97 directly affect how we plan for the next decade and beyond. Move to the next slide. And I'll talk about what is tax increment financing. Before we talk about its impacts, the impacts of tax increment financing, I want to ground the discussion in what TIF is and what TIF is not. And simply put, TIF is not a tax. It captures the increase in taxable value within a defined district above a base year. Only property owners within the district contribute to TIF. Properties outside the district are not affected. In the case of TIF 97, the captured taxes are collected by the Downtown Development Authority, not the city or the other taxing jurisdictions. Importantly, TIF does not raise taxes. Property owners receive the same tax bill whether TIF exists or not. And so if TIF expires at the end of 2027 or it's renewed, the tax bill does not change. The base taxable value continues to flow to all taxing jurisdictions. Only the incremental growth, shouldn't say only, the incremental growth is captured and reinvested locally. Project expenditures within any TIF plan require public approval by both the Downtown Development Authority and the City Commission. And the tool was originally designed to do essentially three things: fund infrastructure and public improvements, support economic vitality, and reduce long-term pressure on the city's general fund. And we'll move to the next slide, and I'll talk about the context of downtown. Downtown does play a unique role in the city's financial and operational landscape. And while TIF 97 district represents 2.6% of the city's geographical area, it accounts for approximately 13% of the city's total taxable value. Downtown is also an area with a high concentration of streets, sidewalks, utilities, public spaces, daily use, and events. Currently, TIF 97 captures about 4.5 million annually. The city share, or what I should say, is the city-originated tax revenue captured by the DDA under TIF is approximately 2.6 million. The non-city share, or the non-city originated tax revenue captured by the DDA, is approximately 1.9 million. And so I just want to be clear about the meaning of city share and non-city share, that we've edited that throughout the presentation to make it clear that city's share is really considered to be the city-originated tax revenue captured by the DDA, and the non-city share is the opposite. Moving to the next slide, 5, which is alignment with commission priorities. As everyone just heard from our finance director and myself, the city is working to be more strategic and forward-looking with fund balance and long-range budgeting. The City Commission adopted OKRs and Strategic Action Plan provide a framework for investments beyond core services. Downtown intersects directly with those priorities, and it includes things such as, this is again in the OKRs, refocusing downtown as a neighborhood, regional collaboration, public realm and place-making investments, infrastructure stewardship, economic stability and resilience, mobility initiatives, and environmental sustainability. We'll move to the next slide. TIF 97 has supported several projects. Notable projects listed here encompass approximately $21 million in public investment over time. This isn't a full list of investments made throughout the plan, and these investments include both capital improvements and ongoing asset stewardship, and you can see them listed here on this slide. Again, this is a sampling of some of what we consider to be notable past investments. We'll move to the next slide. A healthy downtown requires ongoing investment with or without TIF. I strongly believe a healthy downtown makes for a healthy city. Currently, the DDA provides $630,000 annually to the general fund through a service agreement to offset city services, including treasury, human resources, engineering, DPS, and parks. Sorry, like I said, I'm dealing with a cold. $80,000 annually for trash and recycling. And the DDA also supports beautification and holiday lighting, which do not have fixed annual dollar amounts, but do represent a meaningful operational investment. Currently planned or active capital projects include the Farmers Market, Rotary Square, Lower Boardman Ottaway improvements, including, importantly, the replacement of the 100-block pedestrian bridge. These items do become important when we later discuss how the city's share is calculated under different scenarios, which I'll walk us through in a little bit. Next slide, citywide investment pressure. The city does face significant investment needs both downtown and citywide. The community prioritized projects will require strategic investments for corridor improvements in areas such as 14th Street, 7th, 8th, and Garfield, as well as public space enhancements. At the same time, we have to continue investing in core services, street rehabilitation, water and sewer infrastructure, and asset management or maintenance. If TIF 97 expires, I just want to share, and I will walk through candidly what the different scenarios look like. The general fund becomes solely responsible for all projects and programs in the district. We do lose a local regional funding mechanism, and the city's ability to leverage growth for capital investment is reduced. Competition increases for both general fund dollars and external funding such as grants, and I will say importantly, also, if TIF 97 expires, the other side of the coin, if you will, is that the city has more flexibility on how the funds are allocated. I want to acknowledge that because that is true. The next slide, capital improvement plan context. This slide shows a snapshot of draft CIP projects within the TIF 97 district over the next 6 years. It's not a comprehensive list of all TIF-supported activity, but it highlights some notable projects that could be funded through TIF. Not necessarily have to be. Some projects would move forward regardless of TIF. Others might require additional funding. For example, the Brown Bridge Trust Fund Lakeshore Restoration will likely need additional funds to be leveraged to be complete. Also, East Front Street is identified as being funded mostly by TIF 97. But we'd have to ask ourselves, you'd have to ask questions like what type of strategic investment do we want to make in that corridor? The project cost could stay the same with or without TIF. Of course, the scale of that project can be modified. It can be scaled up or down. And also important, this list doesn't include general maintenance, which does remain a core service obligation. We're going to move to the next slide, and I'm going to overview 4 different scenarios. And I'll talk through those different 4 scenarios and illustrate the financial implications and different paths forward. One is for TIF 97 to expire. Second one is for TIF 97 to reset. A third is for TIF 97 to extend. And the fourth and final one that we'll go through tonight is TIF 97 extending, but with an amendment to reduce the capture. In other words, to share some of that capture back with the taxing jurisdictions. Scenarios 2 through 4 are calculated as TIF resets or extends in some way before expiration. And we'll move to the next slide. Okay, and this scenario is TIF 97 expiring. So if TIF 97 expires, no tax increment is captured. The city's general fund would receive approximately $1.32 million annually, net of the service agreement, trash and recycling costs, and millages. So that would be $1.32 million annually that you'd have flexibility to spend anywhere throughout the city. The figure increases over time, of course, as the tax base grows. But importantly, the non-city share, or the tax revenue from other jurisdictions that we would otherwise get, about $1.9 million annually, would no longer be captured by the DDA and flow to the jurisdictions. I want to importantly note that once TIF 97 reaches 30 years, if any of the scenarios, the DDA has committed to no longer capturing the fire millage, so I wanted to highlight that. Under this scenario, the city funds assume full financial responsibility for the TIF 97 district, and prioritization would have to happen around things like capital investments, infrastructure maintenance, beautification, holiday lighting, trash and recycling, as well as the downtown police officer. I'll move on to the next scenario. This is if TIF 97 resets. So in this scenario, TIF would reset to 0 in 2028, and capture would only be on new growth. All of the growth in the prior 30 years would return to the taxing jurisdictions spelled out in scenario 1. 30 years is the maximum statutory term. I want to highlight that it could be less, a shorter term is possible. Over a 30-year period, the projected total capture is $65.55 million, $36.5 million in city tax revenue that would be redirected, $28 million in non-city taxing revenue. And so if this were a preferred direction, of course, we'd have to have some intentional conversations to ensure strategic alignment with the DDA. We'll move to the next slide, scenario 3. This is if TIF 97 extends. In this scenario, TIF 97 would continue as currently structured. The projected 30-year capture would be $213 million. $121 million would be city tax revenue that would be redirected, and $92 million would be the non-city tax revenue. And again, it's up to 30 years. You can go with less if you wanted to. As with other scenarios, this again would require coordination and alignment with the DDA. And then we'll move on to the next slide, which is the fourth and final scenario. This would be to extend TIF 97, but with a reduced capture. This scenario introduces certainly more flexibility. The base year would remain, or could remain, 1997, but the capture is reduced through a plan amendment, and the capture would begin only above an amended threshold, either a later year or reduced percentage. To illustrate, and I say just illustrate because there's a variety of ways to structure this, we've shown a 50-50 example. So this means 50% would be captured for use within the TIF district. The other 50% would remain with the taxing jurisdictions. If this were done over a 30-year period, the total 30-year capture would be $106 million. $50 million would be returned to the city's general fund for use in any fashion. $10 million would be returned to the Act 345 pension system for police and fire. And $46 million would be returned to non-city taxing jurisdictions. And again, this is just one illustrative example. There are a variety of variations. Could be 100% for a defined number of years, an 80-20 split, 40%, there's a range. And again, it would require planning and alignment with the DDA. And then we're going to go to the next slide and just give the snapshot of the different scenarios. Again, scenario 1, TIF 97 expires. There's 0 that's being captured. Scenario 2, TIF 97 resets. Non-city share would be $28 million. City share, $36.5 million. Scenario 3, TIF 97 expires. Non-city share is $92 million. Again, that's non-city originated tax revenue increment captured by the DDA. The city share would be $121 million. So yes, you can see that the city share is greater than the non-city share, and that is important to note. Scenario 4 is TIF 97 extending with a plan amendment to reduce capture. We gave the 50-50 example where the non-city share would be $46 million and the city share would be $50 million. This is a lot to digest. I respect that, but we've tried to boil it down in hopefully as objective a fashion as possible. And then we'll go to the next slide. There are some limitations with tax increment financing. We have a charter provision that was approved by the voters in 2024 that requires that the City Commission can no longer approve or amend a TIF plan without a vote of the people. And ballot proposals do apply to all types of TIF, including brownfield. So I just wanted to highlight that even if a TIF plan is proposed, it first has to now be approved by the electorate. And then, even if approved by the electorate, the City Commission has to also then approve it. And we'll go to the final slide. And this is where either tonight or relatively soon, if you need some time to digest, we need some City Commission direction. If there's a preferred TIF scenario or scenarios that you'd like some further analysis, if you need clarification on anything, we need guidance on alignment with the OKRs and strategic action plan priorities, and then direction on governance and oversight considerations. That's a way of saying if there's a direction that you want to give to the DDA board for them to take under consideration. And so I know that that is a lot. This is a conversation I feel the responsibility to bring to the City Commission and the public to illustrate the items to consider. There's certainly others to consider, but I tried to keep it fairly concise. It is a complex issue.
I just wanted to say two things really quickly. One is, because you're very delicate in language, so I appreciate that, but the non-city money, if it goes in the scenario 1, you said like it goes back to the taxing jurisdictions, that's money that doesn't come to the city anymore.
Correct.
It does not come, so I just
That's
wanted to be
correct.
very clear for the public conversation. Now, what I will say is because it does go to the vote of people first, there is an ad hoc currently convening for the, with the DDA. That DDA members are here tonight. I'm your representative on it, so certainly though we do not get to determine what this might look like or what the vote of the people will be, if there are preferences or ideas that you have based on this presentation, you can share them here, that can be conveyed. I would also say that there is a plan at some point after the DDA ad hoc has had some time to work to bring some of the initial ideas in a joint session with the city commission as well to get feedback, so this won't just happen in a vacuum and then be sent off to the voters and never have city commission input. So here, there's some opportunity tonight. You can always share with me, you can share with Harry at the DDA too, if you think about this and something occurs to you later, or as we bring back something that's closer to a plan that would be voted on, we're going to do a joint session with the city commission as well. So I just wanted to give you all an idea of what that part of the process is going to look like.
One point that I wanted to make is scenario 2, if TIF 97 were to reset. I mentioned 36.5 million city share, 28 million non-city share. 28 million is what you might call a best case scenario, and I say that because if you reset TIF 97, the taxing jurisdictions can opt out. They have that option under that scenario, and I just need to make sure that you are aware of that. Thank you.
So do we have any thoughts anybody wants to share? Okay, Mitch.
Yeah, question. In scenario 2, a reset, is it required that it reset to the new year, or could we have it reset to, say, 2020?
It depends on how you do it. So if you extend it, if you reset it to like 2020, that's more like one of the scenarios further down, because you would have to extend it, and then you would either do the cost sharing, or you would change the base year. There would be a mechanism to do that. But if you just let it expire and then reset it, then you start over from the tax year that the new tax year that you're starting with, 2027 or whatever, whenever that's adopted, and it would be voted on, and then at that point also the taxing jurisdictions could opt out.
Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead, Ken.
I guess because it's going to get, whatever happens is going to get voted on by the charter amendment, what is the sequence of things that are going to happen? Are we going to, you want input from us tonight so that you can help the DDA formulate what they want to put on the ballot? Will we vote as a commission to approve it, then it goes on the ballot? Or once it's whatever's voted on for the proposal, do we then vote on that as a commission, approving whatever the voters approved?
So I think that's sort of what Benjamin alluded to with the city and the DDA board needing to understand that and work together on alignment in advance, because the city commission would not vote on it prior to it going to a vote. The way that it's going to be implemented under the policy that was approved is that all of those steps leading up to that, the DDA would take all of the steps that they take under the statute to bring the plan and recommend it to the city commission. But before the city commission would act on that, it would go to a vote.
So our input is going to help the DDA formulate whatever plan that they're going to put together for a proposal for the ballot.
Yes, and that's also by design, because at the end of the day, and I say this with respect, that the DDA exists potentially as a funding mechanism, an opportunity to leverage a funding mechanism if it's a desire of this community and city commission. And it's important that they take, I say this humbly, but the city commission's input into strong consideration. And so that is part of the purpose of this discussion, is to signal and be clear to the DDA board on how they should be shaping the plan that they're putting forward.
Mitch?
Yeah,
And
is
then Heather.
there a specific timeline that is being looked at for that ballot amendment? Ballot initiative? Would that have to be in November of this year or next year, or could it be in August of this year, or is there some other?
The ad hoc is going on, that it will be on the November ballot.
This year or next year?
This year, but and that's because if you desire, if you waited until next year, it automatically, either it's expired at that point. And so, I mean, that's an option, but that would happen by default.
Heather had her hand
Yeah,
up.
I have a question. In one of those slides, it says notable past achievements, $21 million worth of projects. I'd like to know how much TIF 97 has actually captured in the last 29 years, and
Yes.
what percentage of that revenue went to debt service and administrative, transfers versus new capital projects.
The latter, we'd have to get back to you on. I can tell you, of course, we've got one more year left, but the projected total capture is 4.869 million over the 30-year period.
Or
Oh, excuse me. That's annually, excuse me. I need to clarify this for you.
It
Yes.
started much
Yeah.
lower than that.
Yes,
so I
yes,
can't-
it did, yeah. We can get you answers to those questions, yeah. I'm sorry, again, I have not the
Yes.
best brain right now with all this cold medication I'm taking, but we'll get you clear answers to your questions.
And Ken, you had your hand up, and then Lance. Okay, Lance, not Ken.
I think one of the, some of us looked through all of the audit, and for 24 to 25, it mentioned in that audit that there were 4 bridges, and that the city's share of those four bridges in the downtown area that were redone, repaired, rehabbed, 1.72 million went towards that. I'm curious, what did the DDA put towards that? Like, questions like that, I think,
Okay.
kind of piggyback on Heather's question is, a lot of the slides we just saw advertised continuing TIF as an opportunity to fund infrastructure. And I'm curious how much has actually gone to infrastructure in the last 29 years. And I think that's going to be telling. I don't know the number. I truly do not know that number. But I know that the amount that the DDA has collected over time has gotten bigger. So they've been able to accomplish larger scale projects. I do appreciate the revenue sharing component of that, because we have a tax increment financing tool. The government they'll match certain funds. So I am sympathetic to that. I like that. When you look at these scenarios, I think something between scenario number 2 and number 4, I do not support the extension of it as is scenario number 3, but I think it goes without saying that whatever ends up on that ballot proposal, if it fails, if it doesn't pass, that means that scenario 1 is what a no means. So I
Right.
think that goes without, it's pretty self-explanatory. So
Heather, go ahead. And then, or actually, Laura hasn't spoken yet. Laura and then Heather.
Did Lance go first? Oh, okay.
Lance waved.
So I think it's important that we acknowledge TIF is an issue that has many different perspectives in our community, and likely even up here on the dais, and I think it's important we acknowledge that openly. This is a huge decision for our community, significant long-term decision. It's, as Ben said, it's a lot, and it's likely going to take multiple meetings, engagement with community leaders, and significant continued analysis before we land in the right spot. And as Ken indicated, we have an obligation to set this up for success. Otherwise, the answer is scenario no. So I think a couple of things. I'm hoping that we can focus our conversation around things that we agree on. And TIF is a regional cost-sharing tool. We have a downtown that most communities would love to have. And I have to agree with the city manager that a healthy downtown is a healthy city. It's a reflection of a healthy city. Our downtown is a source of pride for our community. It's an important economic engine, and it's a place that brings people together. For many of us, it's a strong part of our identity as Traverse City residents, and those things matter. It's important. And so, again, that gets to why I think this conversation and these ongoing conversations are really important. Downtown is a regional asset. It's, for me, I struggle as I talk with members of our community and learn more about the different perspectives. In what scenario does it make sense that one city, 15,000 residents, has the obligation for a downtown that is used by 50,000 people every single day? And so I think that also can help frame some of these conversations. And I think those are fair questions to ask.
And Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, mine is, looking at scenario 3, which is the one that the DDA would like to have happen, which is, it extends, In the TIF 97 very much underestimated the property values, the growth in tax capture over the years, like by 35%, which is a lot. And yet, scenario 3 and what the DDA has presented, and they're moving downtown for, is also pretty conservative. So where's the evidence that supports that we're going to not have, the next 30 years will be materially different from what happened the last 30 years? So that's my first question. And my second one is, what is this 30-year extension, what problem is it trying to solve that couldn't be solved by a shorter term or a shorter capture or some kind of hybrid model? And I think that this speaks to what Lance said during the last conversation is, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about stuff we need? Are we talking about stuff we want?
And Heather, I think what you just hit on, though you kind of framed it that you think that there's a predetermined outcome by the ad hoc, the ad hoc is exploring how many years. It doesn't have to be 30. The ad hoc is looking at, is it a renewal, but is it a renewal with the sharing in it, which would be an amended plan then? Because if we do reset, it does get into, and that is on the table, reset is on the table too, but as was mentioned, if we reset, then we potentially lose that 1.9 million or whatever it might actually be of the non-city funds, because everybody can opt out if they want to. And so these are the conversations that are going to be had at that ad hoc as well. So I appreciate the questions, and we'll certainly carry those as well.
And what problem
Yeah.
are you trying to solve
Well,
for the next 30?
That's what the plan will hope to include. So if people have ideas on that, I know we've talked a ton about infrastructure. I think that's something, to Laura's point, that what are things we agree on? We agree on infrastructure. Do people want to drill down before, whether it's now, let Harry know, let me know individually, not collectively, because I'll take it to the ad hoc, but we can't round robin.
I think have them let me know.
Yeah, let me
Yes.
know.
Yes.
And then but also then the joint meeting we have will be opportunities to even be more specific than just infrastructure, or, is it stormwater, I think is on everybody's list, but are there other specific things that we see that we want? Lance?
I'd just be curious, just for an analysis around what infrastructure projects have been completed, and then what do the future liabilities look like surrounding those projects? Just thinking, have we bonded for some projects, and, does that bond payment now come to the city's general fund without TIF? What does that look like? What's our projected necessary expenses? And then, that kind of helps answer, I think, the question that Heather also had.
Yeah, and along with that, I would say in the context of our last conversation, some of these bigger ticket items that we're all talking about and thinking about, how many of those are within the DDA TIF boundaries that potentially that could assist with then in the long
Right,
term as
right.
well?
Yep.
Laura?
Yeah, I agree with both Heather and Lance on this question of what are the outcomes that we are expecting, and how do we align ourselves as a group on those outcomes? So what do the projects look like, and what projects have already been committed to? What projects fit with our strategic plan? Is it the Moving Downtown Forward plan? But some of that has already been stripped out. So I think to really answer this question and to direct ourselves on one of these 4 scenarios, we have to have an understanding of what the end cost is of these projects that we agree on with the DDA, and then how do we get there? That's the piece I feel like we're missing in looking at. I mean, I understand in looking at the one slide. Ben, it'd be really great if we could have the slide with the scenario 1, 2, that one.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. So that's an important question, I think, that we have to have a better understanding of.
Well, that, I'll just say real quick, and then Heather, I do see your hand up. That's the work of the ad hoc. I think, to be fair, the ad hoc is starting with the iteration of Moving Downtown Forward plan that was passed previously. That's not inherently what will be passed, but there is within that the Boardman, stormwater, parking was in it previously. I'm imagining that'll be pulled out unless the city asks us to, because the city is in charge of parking now. So that's something to think about as well. Despite what might have been put out there was not a parking deck in that. There's no intention of having a parking deck in that, to my knowledge. If that's something the city wants, then we need to be clear that that's something that we would like to see in that plan. So using that as a basis of seeing what's there, if there are other things that you feel are missing, then that's where you convey it now. But it can't come to us for a vote first before it goes to the ballot. So that's where we have to keep in mind of this process,
Right.
where we have our inputs and, letting Benjamin know at any time, obviously, whatever gets developed in the ad hoc will be brought as a joint session here to have everybody talk about. I would hope that our commissioners and all of us are communicating enough that there's no giant surprises that 5 commissioners hate the entire plan. So keeping that in mind of the communication as well. So I think that's where we have some answer, or I can say we have some basis to start that with your questions, but we don't have those answers right now, nor will we until we have more meetings and discuss.
Because
So.
I think if we're clear on that, this thought process up here and this level of communication back and forth with the DDA is then the right funding structure, which one of these scenarios fits, will become much easier for us to evaluate and then set it up for success in the ballot box.
But that's ultimately I appreciate how this was presented to us as what do you prefer? We don't have the final say on which one fits because we don't have the vote on it before it goes to the people. So that's what I'm trying to say is the input that we give along the way. Right now, your knee-jerk might be just let it all go, or a knee-jerk might be let's renew it but with a share. But as we talk about the plan and as it goes forward, there's going to be chances for input. But that's ultimately going to shape what goes to the ballot. We do not have that final say where it comes to us to
Right,
say,
I understand
we're
that.
Yeah,
supporting
I think,
scenario 3.
I think then the input is, that needs to be shaped around, strategic outcomes, right? That's
Right.
what I think the 3 of us are probably saying is like,
Yeah,
if we're gonna create anything, if we were to give our opinion, or if I am giving my opinion, show me the outcomes and show me how the plan is shaped directly around those outcomes. I think it probably looks something like scenario 4, but I don't really know.
Right.
Because I don't know what the outcomes are.
right. And I will say the strategic plan and our OKRs and everything are part of the conversation at the ad hoc level too.
It should
so.
add up, and then I think that our discussion and our visibility and conversations with city residents and community engagement can help shape the strategic direction of what that looks like so that it can be set up for success. I understand that we're not voting on which one of these options is going to move forward. That's ultimately up to the voters. But I think that we can play a large role in setting this up strategically so that it's successful, so that it's not, as Ken said, scenario no.
Right. Mitch, you raised your hand and then Heather.
no.
Oh, Heather, sorry.
I've been waiting.
Heather, thank you for the reminder. I've had COVID. Thanks for your patience.
And I, as representatives of the city, we were elected by the city, I'm listening all the time. So I agree, we can set this up for success. We're not voting on, obviously, something that the voters are gonna vote on, but we can help make it successeful. But to get back to this whole strategic outcome thing, our OKR is refocusing downtown as a key neighborhood. And I think that some of that is bringing population in there, so it's actually a neighborhood. But, with 22.6 of the land mass in Traverse City and 100% of the post-1997 tax growth captured by the downtown, how does that align with the city's stated goal of treating downtown as one neighborhood among many? I think this is a big question that needs to be answered.
Okay, good point. Mitch?
Yes, in terms of additional questions, one that I have is, would take some homework. How much of the projects that have been done and other resources has been funded through outside grants? And as a subset of that, how much of that is grants for which we were specifically more eligible because it's a downtown DDA and a DDA TEF?
That's a good question.
Since there are certainly criteria from bridges to community enhancements that the fact that it is a DDA and is matched through a DDA TIF structure does allow us to score more highly.
Yeah, and that, to the point about Ken brought up the bridges, my recollection, and is that that was predominantly paid for by grants and TIF funding and very little from actual city general fund. But that's where we'll get those numbers. That'll help. Heather had her hand up again and again.
So, to maybe move this along.
Thank you.
I've heard from a lot of people that they prefer scenario one, so I would like to hear something about, information about how much the DDA will continue to receive from their mills from the downtown businesses. That would be good to know, I think, as well as the Old Town TIF. And anything that comes from the Downtown Traverse City Association, which is probably minimal. And I'd also, maybe you can throw in there some options for special assessments or a shopping district model. So scenario one, I'd like to see more of, and the other one is scenario four. I'd like to see an 80-20 split on that one. I'd like to see it with the capture from Beta, Veterans Affairs, and Commission on Aging, and without that. I'm leaving the county in there because I think that a healthy city also makes for a healthy county, and I think that those dollars are valuable to them as well as to us. And so the scenario one, scenario four.
Thank you, that's helpful.
I would like a little bit of information too that you just reminded me of, Heather, so thank you, of, this came up, I can't remember if it was at a DDA meeting or at a city commission meeting, but it was mentioned that about a manhole cover needing to be replaced. I think it was a DDA meeting. If that happens on 8th Street, the city pays for it. If it happens in the DDA pays a fee for that. And so I'd like to know if this goes away, the fees that the DDA pays us now to do what we do for other neighborhoods without a fee, what would that transfer look like of kind of on the city budget as well?
Sure.
And then Ken had his hand up, and then back to you, Heather.
I guess the last thing I really want to say about it, you're looking for some sort of like pearls for this, like things to think about and talk about and include in whatever gets presented. Some sort of way to, I don't think it's revenue share is however much money the DDA captured, a percentage of it needs to be available to the city for, like, we talked about those one-time things. Opera House roof, everybody benefits from that, it's in the DDA district. Carnegie Building, we have major heating and cooling issues that need to be addressed with that, so some big expensive items. Same thing with some maintenance issues over at the Bijou. So those buildings are in the DDA, or in the boundary, and when we said, hey, can they contribute to that, it was, sure we can, but like how much? Like, let us know. I would like to have some of that money available for these kinds of costs that we have. So maybe some sort of component where there's a percentage available for the city to access that's not designated. I know they're saving money towards these major infrastructure projects like the Farmers Market Pavilion, and they want to do the Lower Boardman restoration. They're kind of carrying that money over year to kind of help it grow. But we also have those needs as a city that are not being met because this money is being captured and not coming back to the general fund. So maybe some sort of mechanism that can help with that for scenario 4.
But really quickly, though, in the Carnegie building, or, sorry, the Opera House building is absolutely correct. Is Carnegie in Old Town
Yes.
District?
Yes,
Okay, I
it's
couldn't
in the
remember,
Old
sorry.
Town.
All 3 of them are.
Yeah,
Old Town TIF.
yeah, I couldn't remember if it was just
They're
outside
all
the bound.
97.
Yeah. Well,
No.
No,
No, Carnegie.
Carnegie's in Old
Carnegie is
Town.
not.
But Bijou's in.
And Old Town's got several more years left on it, so that's
Anyway.
fair, yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you mentioned the manholes coming off in the downtown and what the effect with that, what effect that would be on, or would have if TIF went away on the general budget. Isn't that part of the service agreement that's going on right now, $630,000?
We'll get you
that's
clarification on all these items
Okay.
in writing.
And, I think that service agreement's only been around 2-3 years, so
It-
before that, the city was paying for everything.
Yeah, we can.
We'll get
get-
you
yeah,
all
we'll get
that
the numbers on
information.
that, so, yep. All right, anything else before we move on?
So what direction, Ben, do you need from us? Is it which one of the scenarios we're more interested in? Is it what questions we have about this? I just want
Yes.
to make sure you have
Thank
the
you.
direction that you need.
I appreciate, as this conversation has evolved, I think it's helpful that we've gotten or received from you additional information that you need, and we will work on providing that in a relatively quick time turnaround, but taking enough time to be accurate, and with everything else going on. So I think the next step is really for us to return to you with that information and then continue this conversation. Thank you for asking.
Okay, and,
Carnegie's in Old Town. I was wrong.
Okay.
So for me, I'm looking at primarily scenario 4, and then in order to evaluate the efficacy of that option, I'd have to understand what is the math going in, which it sounds like that's going to be coming more from the ad hoc. Is that right? So the list of projects and how those are sequenced over what years, and that gets us to the, whether it's 80-20 or 60-40 or 50-40 or 20-80, I don't
Right.
know. I can't
Right.
do that math without an understanding of what are the projects, what are the outcomes that we are trying to address through this regional cost-sharing tool.
And Benjamin will bring that back, as he mentioned, but also in the meantime, if you have other questions or wish lists or anything else.
We go through Ben.
We go through Ben.
Please.
Okay, so,
Got it.
and he's talking all the time to everybody. So, okay, with that, we will now move on to our last agenda item, which is the Farmers Market Pavilion.
I'm just going to turn this, Harry is here. Yep, Harry Burkholder is the director of the DDA, and I think, Harry, you're going to present this, right? And okay, great.
Good evening, Nicole Vaness, Parking Mobility Director. Just wanted to introduce this item. This is in our CIP for the Auto Parking Enterprise Fund. As an introduction, this is a reconstruction of Parking Lot B. We have the opportunity to partner with the DDA with their project, and with that, I will turn over to Harry.
Was a short introduction. Good evening, nice to be with you, and really excited to talk about this exciting project. As Nicole mentioned, this is really one larger project with two main components. One component being the reconstruction of Lot B, which includes also a significant investment in stormwater as part of that lot. And then the other portion of this project, which I'm going to talk about, is the Farmers Market Pavilion. And this project has been under discussion for quite some time. If we go back to one of the first investments in the DDA and TIF, it was those blue awnings that used to be in the farmers market. So this really has come full circle. But in 2016, 2017, the DDA had engaged with some consultants to come up with a conceptual design for the farmers market. And we did. And we had a great conversations. And then when we started looking at the potential location for Rotary Square, we essentially paused in that process to see if the farmers market could fit in Rotary Square. And then we had COVID and we had some change in leadership. So this is where we are today. Over the last almost 6 to 7 months, we've been working with the same consultant to take that original plan from 2016 and talk about how it fits within Lot B as it's being reconfigured. And I'll have our consultant talk about why we're doing that. But we're excited to get your input tonight on the potential scope of that project. We're thrilled that we're having this discussion. We talked about the strategic action plan and the OKRs. I think this project, both from the pavilion and the market that it supports, either directly or indirectly, touches at least 4 of the strategic pillars that we've been talking about over the last several months. So excited to see this conversation continue. I'm going to turn this over to Krista Good, who's a partner with Beck and Rader, who's been helping us essentially since 2016 with the conceptual plan and then the plan that's in your packet today, to talk about the overall scope of the project that includes both the Farmers Market Pavilion and the parking lot.
Thanks, Harry. And good evening, everyone. I apologize. First and foremost, I do have a copy of the presentation with me that says City Commission instead of Parks Commission with today's date. But trust that the presentation we have in front of us is the exact presentation I have on a flash drive here. So just to move on to the first slide in our presentation, we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to review the 2025 Farmers Market from just last year and understand how that has bearing on the reconstruction of the parking lot and the addition of a Farmers Market Pavilion. And then we're going to talk about the 2017 concept plan that we developed and how that evolved as it is married to the 2023 parking lot plan developed by City Engineering, which begat the Unified Market Plan that we are bringing forth to potentially go out to bids for. So if we can move on to the next slide. The 2025 market layout, as you see here, there were 74 vendor stalls in this past year's market. That's been fairly common for the years preceding that. It provided for 66 vendor stalls with vehicles, and 8 stalls without vehicles. And what you can see here is that, and if you've been there, as I'm sure most of you have to experience it, you basically have 2 double-loaded aisles where the customers can walk in the parking aisle and visit vendors on both sides. And it's a very efficient layout, both for the vendors and for the customers. If we'll move on to the next slide then. This is the 2025 non-market day plan, 2016 plan that we developed. It basically is a further development of the parking lot as it exists today. And so you put the pavilion in the center of the parking lot, and we're allowed to have a double-loaded vendor aisle in the center. If we go to the next slide. There we are. So everybody, the vendors load the pavilion, and the customers can use the 10-foot aisle in the center of the pavilion to access all the vendors. And then on the south side of the lot, we would have the vendor tents, as you often see now, which would somewhat emulate the blue awnings that Harry referenced a little earlier when he was making the introduction. So this plan in 2016-2017 provided for 119 total vendor spaces, of which 56 pavilion spaces are provided underneath the pavilion, with 39 paved spaces and then 24 spaces without parking stalls. So as you can see, the 2016-2017 plan provided for additional vendor spaces above and beyond what the market was capable of currently. Let's go to that next slide then. And this is just some renderings of that 2016-2017 plan. Basically, you can see in the profile the vendors double loading into the pavilion, and you can also see that same area with just parking. Let's go to the next slide then. So then we come to 2023, and city engineering worked hard to redevelop a plan for this parking lot and ran into a little bit of a wall in that red line you see there is the MDOT right-of-way and the limits of the city property. And the problem became that we no longer are able to have 4 rows of parking. We're only able to have 3 because we cannot continue to locate the parking lot inside of the MDOT right-of-way. So I'm going to say this a couple times during the presentation, but the take-home message here is we have a reduced number of parking stalls in the ultimate plan we've arrived at and what city engineering found in 2023. The reduction in parking stalls is because we can't have parking stalls in the MDOT right-of-way. There's not a reduction of parking stalls because anybody's trying to reduce parking stalls or because the farmer's market didn't want parking stalls. It's because we can't locate them in the MDOT right-of-way. So that 2023 plan is reduced to 100 parking spaces. And then we got asked to come in and fit the farmer's market pavilion into that. And if we go to the next slide, what we found was a much better plan in terms of providing the same amount of parking, but also providing for the double-loaded rows of vendor spaces that we were looking for the farmer's market. We simply asked city engineering if we could flip their plan and move that third parking aisle closer to the river and slide the pavilion a little bit to the north. And it had a number of positive effects, one of them being that it actually moves, the pavilion would move off of being over top of a water main that bisects the parking lot. So it's efficient for infrastructure. And if we move on to the next slide, what we were able to restore is the original vendor plan where we have 2 double-loaded rows. So we have all of the vendor spaces that are underneath the pavilion, and then we have the rows of tents on a 10-foot sidewalk on the south edge. And those numbers, so we end up with a total of 113 booths, 76 with parking, and the remainder without parking. So,
How many?
we're-
Can you repeat that?
sorry, it's right up there. It's 113 total booths.
I got it right here. It's,
76 of them have adjacent parking stalls right next to the vendor space.
Okay.
And the remaining, I believe it's 36. I've had a copy of this right in front of me before, and I apologize. The remaining 36 do not have parking spaces. You might also notice, as many others who I've given this presentation to have, it's really tightly packed. Many people have asked, well, how do those trucks get in and out of there? Well, the fact of the matter is that the existing farmers market as we have it today has a very tightly choreographed dance of how the vendors load in and load out. The largest trucks have to arrive first, early in the morning before the smallest vehicles, and they load in, and the same way they load out in reverse. And unfortunately, if you're lucky enough as a vendor to show up and sell out by mid-morning, the rules of the farmers market require that you stay the entire time. So what the take-home message here is that, yes, it is very tightly packed in order to achieve all 113 vendor spaces that we propose, but the Farmers Market Committee and Seeds, who runs the farmers market, assured us that this is no big deal because they're already running a very tight ship loading in and loading out. They also pointed out that there's a variation in the number of vendors that actually come to the market. It's more lightly attended by vendors in the spring and midsummer, and then becomes much more heavily fully loaded into the fall when farmers have a lot more produce to bring. So also there's differences between Wednesdays and Saturdays. So it may be that we find that on a lot of Wednesdays, the area underneath the pavilion is fully loaded, and then they expand on Saturdays into the other spaces.
May I ask a question? So,
Sure.
what am I looking at there? All those little orange squares, are those vendor tents?
Yes, ma'am.
And then there's parking right next to the vendor tents?
Yes.
And that's for the vendors' trucks themselves? That's not public parking,
That's
right?
correct.
When the market.
So there's actually vendor tents still on the bank of the Boardman?
Yes, a number of, well, I wouldn't say on the bank of the Boardman. They're on the grass area adjacent to, it would be a level grass area adjacent to the sidewalk on the south edge of the parking lot.
Yeah.
And recognize also that some of those vendors without a parking space would be renting a space where they would be either carting in their wares or arriving early, dropping their wares, and then parking somewhere else. Again, the original number from 2025 that I presented to you early on is 74 vendor spaces. What this presents is an expandable market that can add a significant number of additional vendors, but it is significantly greater than the number of vendors that are currently there today. Any more questions right now, or shall I wrap it up? I'll try and wrap it up here. Let's go on to the next slide then. These are some renderings of the architectural design for the farmers market. It's about 310 feet long, so it is quite a long structure. We've provided for a pedestrian way from that would connect to the bridge and provide a guiding way across the parking lot into the pavilion. And then also there would be brick pavers on either end. And so our intent is that if the budget will allow, as the bids come in, we would have brick pavers down the center of the pavilion, and then brick pavers connecting it to the south to the existing or potentially future improved pedestrian bridge over the Boardman. There's also a skylight, which you can see here, that provides penetration of light underneath the structure, so lowering the amount of electricity during the daytime that would be needed to illuminate the area underneath the pavilion. And you can get an idea here of the scale of the structure relative to the vehicles, the vendors, and the people. The design of the structure has steel columns with concrete bases, And then the upper elements of the roof structure are laminated and wood. And then various steel elements that would help with the structural support of the roof itself. So there's a mixture of materials, very much intended to fit well into the Traverse City architectural patterns. And then finally, we have one more slide to just give folks an idea of the flexibility of this space. In many other communities, these structures are not only used for farmers markets, but if the community so desires, you can also provide it for rentals, for use, or the city itself might choose to make this part of various city events. And this just illustrates that the lighting that's provided intrinsically within the structure that we've designed for provides a minimum level of parking lot lighting. But if you were going to actually use this for events, we have additional electrical outlets built into the design, and additional lighting could be added to support that.
Go ahead, Heather.
I noticed there were solar panels on the roof.
There are no solar panels on the roof. However, the structure can support solar panels if that was added at some time later date.
That was a request
More
for,
like a skylight on the roof.
No, I thought I saw.
That's skylight.
It's a
that's the
skylight.
yeah. There was a conversation at the DDA level about
Yes, I saw.
solar, yeah, and I was going to say, so that is a question that they're asking at that board too, so. Really quickly, I wanted to ask Benjamin to put a little input in with this too. Actually, but first let me open this up. Are there more questions about the design for Chris? Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, so I've seen this presentation a couple times now, but a question I have is, how robust are the steel columns and concrete supports? Because yes, we trust most people to operate their box trucks in a responsible way, but I can't help but see invariably some of them will at one point or another ding a column.
Not just box trucks.
Yes.
Yeah, I would keep in mind that this is no more or less tight quarters than in the various parking decks around town.
So he's
And
asking about, I
as-
think, the
And as far
security.
as the robustness of the design, you know, it meets the structural requirements, which are actually heavier than downstate for the snow loads and various wind loads, and the fact that it is very near to the bay. The architect and structural engineers, in fact, bemoaned to me the additional costs that just needed to go into the fact of where the structure is located. With regard to people bumping into it, again, it's no more resilient or no less resilient than anybody crashing into any other thing. If they bump into it, it's going to chip.
But it's not going to take down the whole thing.
No, sir.
Good to know.
Go ahead, Heather.
So the executive summary said that all the parking would be removed along the river, but the schematics are definitely showing parking on the river.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding where you're saying
We get in our packet an executive summary at the top. Let's see, who did this one come from? From Nicole.
And you'll
Removal
have to-
of parking along the river consistent with the Lower Boardman Unified Plan.
Yes, so that is the 2023 design. And Chris had mentioned that for the circulation, they had flipped and put the parking back on. So if you look at the design I included from 2023, it is 2 rows and then the parking on the north side. So they have flipped that parking on the north side and put it back on the river.
well,
It's still 3 rows
it
of
looks
parking
like-
from 4.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
looks funny, because it looks like you've done that, and it's not done. The executive summary also says that the connection between lots B and T will be severed, with the reason being that that parking is identified as surplus for potential future development.
Yes, so City Commission, I'm not going to remember the year, but we'll say 6 years ago, thereabouts, did identify various city-owned property, including even Lot G at Modes on State Street, as surplus. And so at that point, they were entertaining ideas for potential redevelopment. And so Lot T is a property that was identified, and so knowing that that could happen and be as parkland, the design element was put in to separate those. So if indeed it was surplused, whoever was purchasing it would know that it was separate from Lot B, and Lot B would not need to be redesigned on that western side.
And just to clarify, that's sort of that list that has like Beitner and everything on it. T was identified as on that list as well.
But that's not set in stone, is
No.
it? It seems like you're kind of putting the horse before the cart here. And
Maybe if I
Lot
could answer
B,
that?
what?
I don't know if there's any cart before the horse. The plan has the flexibility. The vehicular
maybe if
connection,
you,
the vehicular connection between the two lots is severed. You won't be able to drive a vehicle from the lot on the west into the lot on the east. But for the foreseeable future, there's a pedestrian connection so that pedestrians can park in that lot and continue to use it and continue to access the farmer's market. So I would pose that it has the flexibility in the plan to respond to the stated desire to potentially divest that property, but to continue to utilize it and have the flexibility for the market to exist now and in the future under
But-
both circumstances.
but I see that those two parking lots as really narrowly contained and without that crossover, and single ingress on either side. So you're going to have people trying to get out of Lot B, and they're going to want to take a left, and there's a traffic light right there on Cass and the Parkway. It's going to be a mess. And then on the other side, you have people who are going to want to take a left to go south on Union Street, and there's also a traffic light right there. I see, we have no plans, as far as I know, to sell that property on Lot T. And so why wouldn't we keep that flow? Why would we close that up? It just constrains everything. I also see a lot of work for that Lot T, plantings and all kinds. What is the plan for that, and who's paying for that, and when does that happen? As far as I know, Lot B is parkland. Lot T is not parkland. That's correct, right? Okay, I wasn't sure if I heard you correctly. So, I don't understand why you'd want to close that off and constrain people even further. One ingress, egress for each of those parking lots.
Yeah, again, I think the direction at the time that we got the reconstruction for the lot was that the then city commission had identified it, and we just did not have or plan to allocate funds to remove any additional parking. So the thought was that because we were doing a full reconstruct and not just a resurfacing, like a mill and fill, that we needed the west end of the lot to be as close to what it would be permanently for another 20 plus years. And so if that's something that you are interested in, we could potentially look at adding, that crossover or removing that piece. But again, at the time, the direction was that there could be surplus, and we were just trying to make it as close to permanent given the cost of reconstruction.
Yeah, on non-market days, it could be open. On market days, you could put some barricades there, so you don't have people trying to drive in, but.
I get what you're saying, that little
Yeah, you
in
can't
between
get through there
Lot T
anymore.
and B. I mean, it could be as simple as a gate. I like that. You have that flexibility to drive in or out either way, but that's design
Because
stuff.
Yeah,
when
well,
I
I
use
was-
that parking lot and I want to go back home, which I live on the east side, I drive through and take Union Street so I can take a right-hand turn. Trying to get a left-hand turn out of Cass is, I'm going to have to drive to be the right turn lady that I am. I'm going to have to drive down Cass and then, it's a lot. You're adding more driving hours by not having that another.
Ms.
egress
Shaw,
there.
I'm somewhat taken aback by just the level of attack on the plan that we put together with the guidance
I'm not
of
attacking, I'm just not.
I'm hearing that we've done something intentionally to do it.
Well,
I
So,
just
yeah.
want to maybe step in very politely.
Please.
I think that the commissioner has the prerogative to express her thoughts, and I'm hearing a reaction from her. I don't see it as an attack, and I say that respectfully. I wouldn't step in if I felt otherwise, so I think that we just need to be open to that feedback.
My question, if I could really piggyback that I was about to ask was, fundamentally, if we decide to keep that open, that doesn't change your design and what we have planned for this part of the lot, correct?
I'm certainly glad to revisit the direction we've been previously given in the past and add in a connection,
Okay.
connecting these two lots as Ms. Shaw suggested.
Okay.
Good.
Ken?
Nicole, was there an element of parking, like metered parking in all of the pavilion spaces for non-market days that'll be?
Yes,
Like-
and I apologize for my squintiness. I lost a contact about a half an hour ago, so I'm really
Oh,
struggling.
you're okay.
So yes, the lot itself is still a part of the auto parking system. So even on non-market days, it will still be ran as a parking lot.
Okay.
We are doing a study session on March 9th to kind of do an overview of parking and some of the elimination from other projects. But currently, anytime that the lot is rented, those event per space fees go back to the parking fund. So that is something that we'll talk about too as we talk about the events or use of this space.
Great, thank you.
Do we have more questions about the design? Go
I have a
ahead,
quick
Laura.
question. What's the net impact on parking on those non-market days? Change? Is there loss in parking spaces with this design?
So we,
Is that on the
As
little
I said, there
thing?
is a reduction in the number of parking
Okay.
spaces from the current lot that we have there today. And the loss is entirely due to the fact that we can no
That-
longer
yep.
locate parking stalls in the MDOT right away.
Okay. Okay, great. And then the increase on the vendor stalls is from 74 to 113.
And that is the increase in potential capacity.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So I was trying to let everybody ask design questions first, but I did want to bring up something because I think it gets lost as we have these conversations a little bit, is we often talk about, because of the nature how things come to us, this is a project that's being funded by TIF and DDA for the design and the pavilion and all of that. This is an example, though, of the DDA and the city working together. And if Benjamin and maybe Nicole, if we get into more than a broad overview, this is happening right now because the city's also going to be doing work there. And so I wanted Benjamin to talk a little bit about the work that's going to
And
be
I'm
done
going
there.
to kick that to Squinting Nicole.
Okay, there we go.
I gave her a heads up that I was going to ask her to do that. Thank you, Nicole.
yeah, so this lot will include a full reconstruct. So previously, when it was put on the CIP, it was just for resurfacing. So with that, we have the opportunity to upgrade the stormwater management, which will have a in-ground infiltration system. I do want to clarify in the CIP, if you look at the budget, the parking portion is identified as roughly 650. We did have 400 as the probable estimate from engineering for stormwater. So we're hoping to be able to recoup some of those funds. If not, then those would fully come out of the parking fund, and that was explained in the memo. So again, with the reconstruct, we have an opportunity to upgrade that stormwater system below that lot.
Thank you. Harry?
In the tag team through here with three people, but we do have in this year's fiscal budget that we have allocated funds in addition to the pavilion for stormwater management to kind of go to that total that Nicole just talked about.
And I just wanted to bring that up because, again, I appreciate that it's been emphasized that the spots we're losing because of MDOT right-of-way, not because of, as I've had it put to me, for some silly, stupid, fancy park, farmer's market. And the fact that this isn't just arbitrarily going to tear up the farmer's market one summer just to tear it up, that there is actual infrastructure work being done underneath, too. So, do we have other questions for anybody up there? We've got all three of them now. Okay.
What are you
Mitch?
thinking about for
Okay.
roofing material? That's a, like,
Oh.
I just think about like the long term, if you put shingles on there, you're gonna get about 20 years. And are you thinking about like metal roof versus
Yes, sir.
something like long term, more sustainable?
Yes, in fact, if we could back up a slide or two,
They look like slate tiles.
they are actually metal shingles.
Nice.
And it's a three-color pattern. And if that is, it could also default to a more affordable standing seam metal roof, recognizing that the city has a budget for this. We're very hopeful that this will fit into the budget when we bid it out, but we're leaving the possibility that it could also be a standing seam metal roof. But the takeaway message is this is a very long-term, 40, 50-year roof that you get with that.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking along those plans when we start thinking about the incorporation of like solar panels onto it. Because if you put solar panels on top of like shingles, you're gonna have to pull the solar panels off when you redo the shingles. So this is whole like more long-term thinking, and I appreciate that.
The
so.
metal roof can support the,
Oh, yeah. I wasn't too worried about the weight of them, more of the, to repair the roof or redo the roof, you have to take the labor and solar panels and the time, and so appreciate that.
Mitch?
What's the timeline for this, assuming that everything comes back from going out to bid well and you're able to start without weather delays or whatever else, for when construction would actually start and when would construction be anticipated to be completed?
It's a great question. I mean, with your input tonight, I think city staff will be working on essentially a bid package that we hope to get out by the end of the month. Then once we hear back from those responses, then we'll have a better idea of what that timeline is. Over the last year, we've been looking at doing this as a spring project, but there's a lot to be seen in terms of that start date, but that's our intent.
Because that's a very heavily used part of town in July, so.
Correct.
All right. Other questions? Okay, thank you everyone for the presentation. And with that, I will actually go ahead and open up for public comment. Any public comment on any items or anything you want?
We ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, and/or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment per speaker. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep. And finally, we request that all language be respectful to all parties.
Tim Warner, city resident, 608 West 7th Street. Back on the topic of the policy for the general fund, the part that wasn't included in the packet or the presentation, and hopefully you all had a chance to look it up, but in the policy, and this is, I'm just reading it for the public's benefit that may be watching, should the unassigned fund balance go above the 20% level, the city commission, in conjunction with staff, shall develop a plan for utilization of those funds to bring the unassigned fund balance back down to the 20% level. So that's what you do. There's no reason to wait for an ad hoc till September. Just start the plan for the ad hoc. There's a huge learning curve to study the fund balance. Mr. Howe has already sent you an email about some of the other pots of money that are out there. So that learning curve will take months, and you might as well start talking about what your priorities are. It's not like you're wasting time. Start talking about priorities with staff and get a head start on it. Don't wait till September. So you don't have to set the policy aside. You're actually following the policy because it just says work with staff to figure out how you're going to spend the money. And that's what you should do, in my humble opinion. Other topic is TIF 97. And I would encourage you to think about the big picture and what your neighbors think. Like, I don't really think it matters what city leaders and people in powerful places think. You want what the electorate thinks if you have any hopes of having it approved. And then what you're up against is that $2.6 million. That's either value or tax dollars. Like, that's $2.6 million every year of value to those city residents. And so you have to come up with convincing arguments why what the DDA is planning to do with that money is better than them having some more direct say or going back to them or into their neighborhoods or that sort of thing. Previously, the DDA used to use the argument that it was, infrastructure. It was going to be infrastructure that the general fund would otherwise have to take care of. Well, that wasn't in your presentation now. Now it's just projects. Infrastructure is what you should stick with. If you really want the electorate to approve it, infrastructure, because that's where you can say, like, well, this has to be done. It has to be paid for. So it gets to needs, not wants. It really has to be needs. Identify the needs. If they're really needs, you can convince the electorate to do that. But I don't think you're going to be able to pull it together. It's not you. I don't think the DDA is going to be able to pull it together by November. And then you also have to think about who's showing up in November. I think there's going to be a huge turnout. And people aren't coming to the polls all happy and giddy about a bright, sunny future. They're pissed off. So keep that in mind.
Fred Bimber, 1223 Randolph Street, city resident. Just a few brief comments. I'm not going to comment on everything, but the presentation on TIF 97 said that it does not raise property taxes. That claim is false. It does raise property taxes. The tax revenue that's diverted by TIF 97 puts a hole in the city budget that all city taxpayers have to make up through higher property tax rates. And we can see that what I have just said is in fact true when we look at how the property tax rate is set. It's set at a level that funds both the taxes that reach the city and the amount that's diverted to the DDA. A second observation, the meager amount of property taxes that are paid by that actually are paid to the city from the TIF 97 district, the taxes on that base taxable value, have had no inflation adjustment for nearly 30 years. The true value of that tax revenue to the city, its purchasing power, is about half what it was before TIF 97 began. The TIF 97 district does not pay its fair share towards common city basic expenses like police, fire, ambulance, parks, and streets. TIF 97 is in fact a taxpayer subsidy to the downtown. Our downtown more and more is primarily serving tourists and non-residents. Increasingly, the downtown consists of seasonal home condos and short-term rentals. If TIF 97 is extended, our tax rates will increase even more. TIF 97 should expire at the end of its originally scheduled time. Not extending TIF 97 does not mean the end of TIFs, but something new should be brought forward that's acceptable to the voters and acceptable to the county and other tax authorities that will be asked to participate.
Thank you, Fred.
Justin Reed, 630. Justin Reed, 630, Country Drive, apartment 1B. I would love to find if there was any other industry than the tourism industry. Unfortunately, that's the only industry that we have in Traverse City. And I don't think that trying to say, oh, well, you know, making reinventing the wheel for this is just not an answer. The tourists are going to be here, and unless someone else has another industry that they can point to that brings in a lot more money than the tourist, go for it. But I don't see any other one. So on another topic, second topic, about the housing. So the Traverse City Housing Authority is still currently appointments only. And if people are trying to find housing and, you know, for example, there's a consumer at North Lakes Community Mental Health that has tried to contact the Housing Authority over a couple of things. They have not responded back to them because their office is appointment only. And email and calling has not been able to be successful at all to this. So maybe there should be some sort of solution to try to open up the Traverse City Housing Authority's office for walk-ins instead of just being appointments only. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Howe, 926 Lincoln Street. Thank you. This has been a wonderful discussion around budget tonight. You guys are very deliberative, thoughtful, and I appreciate it. So you probably don't hear that enough, especially at public comment. It was referenced that I sent you an email, which I did, because I was on the ad hoc committee to create the fund balance policy. The reason we did that is we consistently would see when the audit came back that we had a 42 to 45% fund balance, with no plan of spending it other than some future plans that were unscheduled and unknown, and maybe they would happen, maybe they wouldn't. And reason why we ended up with 15 to 20% is because there's a state mandated 15% emergency fund that's not included in that fund balance. So with 15 to 20%, you always effectively have 30 to 35% fund balance. That emergency fund is not untouchable. We just prefer not to touch it. But if you can touch it if you need it. So staff can correct me if I'm wrong afterwards or why they position isn't accurate. But when the city commission I was on saw that as plenty to have a 30 to 35% fund balance, including that emergency fund. I also just wanted to point out I'm a strong supporter of downtown, largely in part because it's the commercial districts that support our neighborhoods. And that's not just downtown. There's West Front, there's East Front, there's Garfield, there's 8th Street and 14th Street. And for too many years, our corridors have underperformed. We've started to see that turn around with 8th Street revitalization. West Front Street saw some investments, and we've seen some private development afterwards. The DDA was ahead of the game. It was ahead of its game in Michigan. It was ahead of its game in the country in many regards. I'm not going to voice an opinion on TIF today. I just want to speak to the power of commercial districts to support my little neighborhood in Traverse Heights. Without it, I'm not getting new anything because my taxes don't pay enough to replace the infrastructure in front of my house. They just don't. And they never will because we don't have the density, we don't have the capacity to do that. In 2017, the city did a study about the taxable value per acre of Traverse City compared to the county. And you do the taxable value per acre because it's like miles per gallon. You don't just measure the size of the tank, you measure the efficiency. And Traverse City as a whole is 83 times more efficient than the county. Downtown is 5 times greater than the rest of the city. So it isn't just 2% of the land given 13% of the taxable value. It's actually much more efficient. So for me, as we move forward, I just hope we keep that in mind, that you have to continue to invest in these areas that support all of us.
Thank you. Any other public comment for tonight? Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Any final thoughts from the commissioners? All right. Thank you all for a very good, robust discussion tonight. I hope everybody continues to either be on the mend or stays healthy, and we will see you all next week. Thank you. On Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks.
Feeling better?
Yes.